Hey guys, Twan the counselor here, back at you with another video. Today I wanted to do something that I thought could be helpful for everyone. So I want to talk about intrusive thoughts, and more importantly, I want to give you a skill that you can actually use to help with intrusive thoughts. All right, so what are intrusive thoughts? I could give you a textbook definition, I could go on and on, but I like to keep things very simple. An intrusive thought is an unhelpful or unhealthy thought that just kind of pops into your head, and sometimes we have like what I call those greatest hits of terrible thoughts that we often think about ourselves, the ones that kind of intrude more often than others. Those thoughts can cause us to feel bad about ourselves. They can cause us to even be fearful or to think irrationally, think that something's going to happen when there's actually no evidence supporting it. So intrusive thoughts are just things that we don't think on purpose, that just kind of pop into our minds and tend to have a negative impact on how we feel or how we behave. So what do we do when an intrusive thought pops into our head? Well, there's many things you can do, but today I want to talk to you about a specific technique called defusion. Now, not diffusion like what we learned about in science, right? Not D-I-F-F-U-S-I-O-N, D-E-F-U-S-I-O-N, defusion. And defusion is all about being able to detach from the thought. Right? So what usually happens is if we don't do anything about these intrusive thoughts, we have a tendency to connect with them, and then we start believing those thoughts. We start believing the things that pop into our head about ourselves. So for example, if what pops into my head is I'm ugly, I'm unattractive, no one's gonna find me attractive, if I allow myself to connect with that thought, then I start to believe it. And then I start to behave like someone who doesn't think very highly of themselves. So what diffusion helps us to do is, it helps us to just see the thought as a thought, to give ourselves some distance from it, to see that this thought doesn't have to necessarily be attached to me, right? So it's sort of in line with the concept of non-attachment that I recently actually learned about that principle from a client who practices Buddhism. They taught me about the Buddhist principle of non-attachment. And so diffusion is similar to that. It's saying to yourself that I am not going to allow myself to get attached to the things that my mind says, right? These are just thoughts. They don't have to necessarily mean anything. So how do we diffuse? So first, the thought pops into your head. I'm ugly, I'm unworthy, I'm stupid, whatever it is. Step one is you say to yourself, I notice that I'm having a thought that I'm ugly, that I'm unwanted, that I'm unloved, whatever it is. I notice that I'm having a thought that fill in the blank. That first step gives you some distance from it. Instead of saying, I notice that I'm feeling ugly, I notice that I'm feeling unloved or unworthy, you're saying, I notice that I'm having a thought that says I am whatever. And then you thank your brain. You say to your mind, thank you for showing me that. And then you let it go. You let it float away. Let it float away. So it's similar to what we practice when we're starting to learn mindfulness meditation. It's about being able to notice things that come up in the mind and then allowing it to drift away, right? So it comes up, I notice that I'm having a thought. Thank you, mind, for bringing that to my attention. And now I can let it go. And it might even help to imagine that thought as like a cloud, or something that eventually floats away, right? So you kind of look at it, you look at the thought, you notice it, and then you allow it to gently float away. And you do that as often as you need to. As a matter of fact, it's a good idea to actually practice it. You know what those greatest hits are. You know where your mind goes. It's a good idea to actually practice that, so that in the moment it becomes second nature to you. All right, and you just allow it to float away. Now, some people add an additional step there. It sometimes helps to repeat the thought out loud in a funny voice, right? Almost like just mocking the thought, right? So if the thought comes up that I'm not good enough, I notice that I'm having a thought that I'm not good enough. Thank you, brain, for bringing that to my attention. But it's just a thought. I'm not good enough. You allow it to go away. All right. So, and really have fun with that. Really have fun with it. There's a different level of healing that you reach when you're able to laugh at some of those thoughts, right? Instead of attaching to them. When you're able to just almost say to yourself, oh, here we go again. There's that I'm not good enough thought again. We know exactly where that's coming from. All right, noticing the thought, and I'm just gonna let it float away. All right, so I hope this is helpful for you, and I hope it's something that you will consider adding to your repertoire of coping skills. This has been Twan the Counselor, light and love always.